Judging an NBA player's playoff resume should be simple in theory. They're either a winner or a loser. But the one exception to this rule is LeBron James. Throughout the first couple portions of his career, he had to be perfect. Anything less than a championship was an objective failure. But after his 2015 playoff run, this logic completely flew out the window. So today, we're going to take a look back at this very odd postseason for LeBron, go over its defining moments, and explain why this altered the discourse for not only LeBron, but star players in general from that point forward. As we all know, LeBron headed back home to Cleveland in the 2014 offseason to try and finally bring his hometown team a championship. At this point in his career, it was common knowledge that he was one of the greatest players of all time. With 4 MVPs, 2 rings, and 2 finals MVPs, there was just no denying it at this point. However, the one major complaint that people still had about him was the fact that he was only able to get over the hump and win titles with a super team that he formed in Miami. For the first time in 4 years, he was in a situation where the deck was no longer totally stacked in his favor. But it wasn't like he left Miami to go to the Pistons or anything. He was coming back to a Cleveland team that not only had an up-and-coming star in Kyrie Irving, but also went out and traded for Kevin Love, who was seen as the best power forward in the league at the time. Realistically, this roster wasn't nearly as good as the juggernauts that he had in Miami, but the general consensus was that it should still be enough to continue competing for titles. But that was no longer the case when the playoffs rolled around. As Cleveland was in the final stages of sweeping the 7-seeded Celtics in the first round, Kevin Love and Kelly Olynyk got tangled up, and it resulted in the Cleveland big man dislocating his shoulder and being out for the remainder of the postseason. For the first time in about 6 years, the LeBron-led team was no longer the clear-cut favorite to come out of the East. Not because of that fraudulent 60-win Atlanta Hawks squad, but because of the 3-seeded Chicago Bulls, who were their next matchup in the conference semis. With an elite defensive scheme from head coach Tom Thibodeau, an up-and-coming star in Jimmy Butler, and a rejuvenated Derrick Rose, this Chicago team seemed to match up really well on paper with the Cavs, especially after Love's injury. Right off the bat, it was clear that this Cavs team was in some trouble, as the Bulls grabbed Game 1 on the road with a commanding defensive performance. LeBron and company responded in Game 2 with a 15-point victory, but things changed when the series shifted over to Chicago for Games 3 and 4. And unfortunately for Cleveland, the injury bugs still seemed to be around, as Kyrie Irving was now visibly hobbled with foot and knee injuries. Game 3 was an absolute rock fight that saw both of Cleveland's stars struggle offensively all night long, but they were somehow able to put themselves in the position to go to overtime after a huge J.R. Smith three-pointer tied the game in the final seconds. But Derrick Rose responded with an absolute prayer of a three-pointer that somehow banked in to give Chicago the win at the buzzer. It truly felt like a series-altering shot at the time, as the Bulls now had another home game with a chance to go up 3-1, and it seemed like the Chicago team may just be too much to overcome. It was from this point onwards, though, that LeBron had maybe the most underrated 48 hours of his career in terms of cementing his legacy. In the post-game press conference, a reporter tried to bait LeBron into criticizing Kyrie, who finished the night with 0 assists. As we all know, LeBron's had his fair share of head-scratching post-game responses, but in this case, he stepped up and gave just about as perfect of an answer as you ever could have asked for. This is great PR for the King, but it didn't change the fact that he'd been having a horrible series to his standards at that point, shooting below 40% from the field. And with Love out and Kyrie not being much more than a decoy, the spotlight was directly on him in Game 4 to try and get back into the series. Did he respond with an incredible stat line to shut everyone up? Not at all. James finished just 10 of 30 from the field and committed 8 turnovers. However, he finally did what everyone had been waiting for him to do since he came into the league, and went down swinging by taking matters into his own hands. Even though he was clearly out of rhythm, he didn't become passive and shy away from the moment. He easily could have as well, as he had a nasty ankle roll in the third quarter with his team down 6. He very easily could have punted and came out of the game from there, blaming the loss on his injury, but he was somehow able to stay in this game and close it out. When people say LeBron's durability used to be otherworldly, this is exactly what we're talking about. Up 2 with 18 seconds left, LeBron committed an offensive foul while trying to split a double team, and then Derrick Rose made a layup over him to tie the game. After the ball went out of bounds with a little over 1 second left, head coach David Blatt initially drew up a play where LeBron was inbounding the ball, but James scratched that and told his teammates to just get him the ball so he can win them the game. And that's exactly what he did. This is the exact type of stuff that people have always criticized him for not doing. As someone who was notoriously a no problem deferring to teammates in big moments, everybody used to say that they didn't care if he was making the right play, and that if LeBron was truly on the level of guys like Kobe and Mike, he would make sure he's the one taking the final shot, regardless of if it makes sense or not. And despite being just 9 of 29 from the field, he didn't shy away from the moment, and it resulted in what I think is the most underrated play of his career. After making this shot, Cleveland went on to finish off the Bulls in 6 games, and go up against that Hawks team that I mentioned from before. While the Cavs were still favorites in this conference finals, Kyrie went from playing while hobbled to entirely missing multiple games in this series due to his ailments. Despite that, LeBron still managed to sweep Atlanta, highlighted by an incredible Game 3 performance where he absolutely willed his team to a win. And once again, he approached the game with the exact mindset that critics have been waiting for. James began this game an abysmal 0 of 10 from the field, quite literally the worst he's ever shot to start a game in his career. But with both Kyrie and Kevin Love out, he didn't have anyone to defer to, and had no choice but to take it upon himself to try and figure it out. He eventually overcame his sluggish start, as well as body cramps from the heavy usage, and finished with 37 points, 18 rebounds, 13 assists, and the game-winning 3 to seal the win for the Cavs. Out of sheer willpower, he was able to muster up a stat line that has never happened before or since this night. Once again, LeBron showed that he did in fact have an all-time great killer instinct. Even though his jump shot wasn't falling at all, and his team spacing was compromised without healthy co-stars, he was still able to find ways to put up monster numbers, and somehow make it out of the Eastern Conference for the 5th straight year. Heading into the finals, many experts picked the Cavs to upset the generally inexperienced Warriors. It sure looked like they were going to have a shot early on, as Game 1 went into overtime. With 42 points heading into OT, it was clear that all LeBron needed was just one reliable secondary scorer on his side, as Kyrie's 23 points put them in a position to potentially win the game. However, Irving ended up going down with a fractured knee in the overtime period, and then it was announced that he would miss the entire rest of the series. After this news came out, as well as the fact that Cleveland lost a heartbreaking Game 1, every single person on planet Earth wrote off the Cavs, as most thought that this series that was initially projected to be lengthy was probably going to now be a sweep. In an absolutely cooked situation where his team had no chance to seriously compete, LeBron responded with a monster 39 point, 16 rebound, 13 assist triple-double to stun the Warriors by pulling out a victory in Game 2. And like some of the other performances throughout this run, it wasn't in any way pretty, as he shot just 11 of 35 from the field. Regardless, we were all amazed at the fact that he was still able to dominate without being an efficient scorer, as it was clear he was able to impact every single aspect of the game. Not only that, but another 40-piece from LeBron in Game 3 gave Cleveland a 2-1 series lead. For a brief moment, it looked like the Cavs were actually going to pull off the upset of a lifetime without Kyrie and Kevin Love. However, we were then brought back down to reality, as Golden State then won 3 straight to win the first of 4 titles with their core. But that was at no fault of LeBron, as he averaged 30, 15, and 9 over the course of those last 3 games. This was the first final since the 70s where the losing player was so clearly the best in the series that LeBron actually got some votes for Finals MVP. It was during this Finals performance, and his postseason run as a whole, where the public really turned in LeBron's favor. No longer was he reaping the benefits of super teams that he put together himself, he was squeaking out wins with Timofey Mozgov as his second offensive option in the finals. The fact that all of this came in a losing effort really made us start to think about players' legacies. No longer was it as simple as wins and losses. Even though LeBron went 1-3 against the Warriors during this famous rivalry, most people actually thought more of James after this era because of the insane numbers he put up each and every year. These performances made it so abundantly clear that, contrary to popular belief, you can still lose despite an otherworldly performance from your team's best player. So now, when guys like Giannis, Curry, and other superstars come up short in the playoffs, now we can say things like, Curry didn't three-peat because Klay and KD both got hurt, and he was getting boxed and won by Toronto. Or we can say that Giannis didn't repeat, but he dragged his Bucks to a 7-game series against Boston without his co-star in 2022. All of this discourse is thanks to the 2015 playoff run right here by LeBron. Now, this has without a doubt resulted in some fans making excuses for their favorite players when they don't live up to expectations, but I think this playoff run by LeBron brought some much-needed logic to the debates that we have in the basketball community. So for better or worse, LeBron's 2015 playoff run was not only the most impactful of his career in terms of how he's perceived, but also forever altered how we scrutinize star players. And that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know in the comments which moment from this playoff run was your favorite, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.